The Saints offense is looking to break out in their second year with head coach Kellen Moore and quarterback Tyler Shough. We break down the biggest fantasy storylines for the 2026 New Orleans Saints on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Michelle Magdziuk. I'm joined with my co-host, Vinnie Iyer. Today, we're continuing our team series where we give each team a full episode to fully dig into all of their fantasy storylines entering this upcoming season. Today, it's time to discuss all things New Orleans Saints, their fantasy potential across the offense. They have high hopes this year, right? And it all comes down to, though, one guy, and that one guy is their second-year quarterback, Tyler Shough. Can he fully take that next step and have the Saints done enough to build around him so that he can have an impressive second year after shocking a lot of people in his first season? So let's start with the quarterback here in Shough. Last year, he averaged 17.1 points per game as a rookie in starts. That was 16th among quarterbacks in starts last year. It was more than what Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Jayden Daniels averaged last year. And it only got better as he went along. His last 6 starts, he scored at least 17 fantasy points in all 6 of those games, including 3 weeks with at least 21 points. And from that span, weeks 13 through 18, he was the quarterback 6 on average. So he showed that he could get it done with his arm, with his legs. He had that sneaky rushing ability as well. But right now, he's currently ranked as just quarterback 18, sandwiched between Kyler Murray and Jordyn Love. We've talked a lot about how we expect him to be able to make that breakout in year 2, but discuss more on your thoughts about him and where do you think he should be ranked this year?
The funny thing is I didn't really like this pick when the Saints made it. I was like, this is a bit of a reach. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people were in the same boat. Let's be clear about that. I think it was about the Ty Simpson level of reaction when the Rams took him, but a little bit less than that maybe because it was a second-round pick. But I think what we forget is the system is very important, and the system is very good. It's the Kellen Moore system. It goes back to Dallas, 1 year with the Chargers, of course, the years in Philadelphia when Jalen Hurts was having big fantasy seasons as well. I mean, remember Dak had some big years with Kellen Moore there as well. And Justin Herbert, look, it was another transition for him. So we'll throw that one out. But in terms of Kellen Moore being an elite play caller, he is. He's just going to put his guys in position to succeed. And he did use Tyler Shough's running ability. That was important because that padded his stats quite a bit here. Now they go out and get Travis Etienne, who's a good receiver if they plan to use him that way out of the backfield. But the running game in general should help the passing game and keep things opening up all over the field. You had 2 receivers essentially got it done with him, Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson, because they moved on in the middle of the year by everything that was seen from Shough late in the year. They didn't have Rashid Shaheed or Brandon Cooks. So they really were emptying the cupboard, and he was still producing, which was a surprise here. He was making do with whoever they threw out there with Olave and Johnson, and they really were his 2 keys to success. And now you add a first-round receiver, Jordyn Tyson, on top of Etienne, 2 more key weapons. This offensive line is pretty good. Saints are just an ascending team overall. I mean, they're having a quick rebuild here with their offense especially. So I really like his potential. Again, he was even better in certain stretches last year. I mean, weeks 12 through 18, he had 12 to the 13. He was up to 5th in overall scoring QB, depending on your format. That's from NFL.com. And then he was 10th, basically, in the middle of the season until the end of it. So he was a viable starting quarterback when he was out there. I think we didn't look at that because he was a rookie. He was kind of dismissed. He was thrown in after the mess in the first half of the season with Spencer Rattler. So I think the Saints kind of flew under the radar. We didn't pay attention to what they were doing necessarily with their numbers or even in reality. So he kind of quietly put up these numbers. I don't think it's going to be so quietly after this year. I think you say, look, QB 18, this may not be fair based on how he produced last year. And again, he's just going to compile. That's what we're looking for, right? Run a little bit, throw a little bit to these guys. He's got now that extra weapon with Tyson. So again, you can't dismiss that because these moves are always kind of you question them a little bit. How much are they doing outside being aggressive with the offense? But then you're like, hey, these cater nicely to the quarterback. They believe in this quarterback. They want to give him weapons. They believe in what he can do in more system in year 2. So the Saints believe in him, and they're giving him the tools to be more successful and more productive. I think we should too, Michelle.
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing here that we were saying that the Saints need to do is get him more receiving help, because last year it was Chris Olave, and at wide receiver, not much else. They traded away Rashid Shaheed in the middle of the year. It was Devon Vele that had the second most targets from in the wide receiver position last year. So, and it was a good 50 fewer targets than what Olave saw from Shough. So it was really just Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson that he had to target. Didn't get a lot of playing time there with Alvin Kamara before he went down, and Kamara wasn't really playing that well even before he went down. So I do think the addition of Travis Etienne will be huge for him to have that check down guy, or just to have a better running game in general helps out quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And they brought in a good guard in David Edwards. That was a spot that they needed to fill and make better. And then you mentioned they drafted Jordyn Tyson there early in the draft, 8th overall. Still have Olave. Kellen Moore now, second year in the system, second year as head coach. Like, he should feel more comfortable too. There's a lot of things leaning his way. It's just, he has to continue to get better, right? Because there's going to be more film on him. He's no longer going to be a surprise to teams. Like, he has to take that next step forward, but there's reasons to believe that he can do that. And you mentioned the end of the year, he was such a good fantasy quarterback. Only Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, Drake May, Matthew Stafford, and Joe Burrow averaged more points per game than Drake May over the last third of the season from weeks 13 through 18. So we see the production. He just needs to take that next step forward. And we both think that he can. It just comes down to, like, in one quarterback leagues, are you taking the shot on him? Obviously, you'd be waiting until very late in drafts, right? Double-digit rounds here, because he's being ranked as a quarterback 18. But is that a guy you're taking a shot on in one quarterback leagues?
I think I am, because I just like the values. We've talked a lot about the values down here. We looked at Jared Goff, we looked at Baker Mayfield, we looked at Kyler Murray. There's a lot of quarterbacks that you can get by with down here. And you mentioned, when you were comparing Tyler Shough to Drake May, you mentioned Drake May again. And that kind of is the guy, right? To me, that why was Drake May getting all that buzz? I mean, there was no question. Like, he was going top 8, top 10 in drafts. Like, there was no hesitation, right? If you add the same elements, second-year quarterback, better weapons, great offensive system, has a little bit of running ability, why would you boost Tyler Shough that high, right? I think, again, part of it is the Saints and not the Patriots. The Patriots always create buzz when they do something, and there was that. So there's a little bit of forgetting about New Orleans down here. This is the worst division still, so that helps, really, because you don't have any elite defenses anymore. The Bucs have really dropped off. Atlanta had a good pass rush, but they don't have Raheem Morris anymore. And the Panthers have had their share of defensive issues. So it's a good division to put up some numbers. Overall, the schedule is rather favorable. It looks good, like, overall, to put up some numbers and some games. So I really think, I mean, he should be getting the same level of respect that we have to make. Now, Cam Ward, if you want to draw a line there to say, look, we need to see a lot more before we believe in that, but there's a lot more evidence that Shough has put up here to say he should be going higher than he is at this point. And we're not just looking at last year's numbers, we're also looking at this year's improvements, what they're building on, and all the variables have proved to be more in his favor, right? If anything, things are going toward him versus away from him in terms of what's going to help him out to put up fantasy points. So I'm excited. I'm going to keep it under wraps a little bit that I'm going to target him in a lot of leagues. But I think you might see him rise a little bit. But even if he rises, he's still going to be good value. Even if he gets up to like our QB 13, QB 14 at some point in the preseason, that is still a good time to strike with him.
I agree as well. I think he can have very high upside this year and be a great value late in drafts. We get that a lot with these second-year guys. You get good value in them, and they will outproduce and take that next step up. So let's talk about his playmakers now. Who will be the better fantasy value at their wide receiver position? Will it be Chris Olave or Jordyn Tyson? And do we have any interest in Juwan Johnson after his season last year? We'll get into all of that right after a quick break. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on the Locked On Fantasy Football Show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, we have some confusion now with this receiving core with the Saints. Before the draft, it looked like, okay, Chris Olave is the main guy. He's going to get all the targets again. He had a career year last year. He was a wide receiver 9 and average scoring at 13.6 points per game. Huge year after a really disappointing 2024 season. He's still very young, just is turning 26 years old in June. But now you add in Jordyn Tyson out of Arizona State, and he's the 8th overall pick. These two have very different ADPs in terms of fantasy drafts. So Olave is still being drafted at the wide receiver 13, 30th overall in drafts in the 3rd round, while Jordyn Tyson right now is sitting at wide receiver 36, 75th overall in the 7th round. You know, rookies still continue to move up once they get hype around training camp. But right now, when it comes to value, I know I'm definitely on the Tyson side. I'll tell you why. But you really like Olave. Are you still on the Olave train even after they drafted Tyson?
I mean, this one has been a work in progress as I've examined the way that the Saints want to operate their offense. And recently, Tyler Shough, in the work that they've done, has been buzzing about Jordyn Tyson. He's called him an elite separator. So I don't think this is necessarily good for Chris Olave because Tyler Shough is having an instant comfort level with this rookie first rounder. So I think Tyson is a very good route runner. He can line up all over the field. I think he gives them actually a little bit more versatility in some ways than Chris Olave as well. So again, wide receiver 13 is really high cost for Olave. I mean, really high. You're saying he's going to be right outside the top 12 again when things have changed. You have another guy, you have wide receiver 36 for Tyson. You're getting him 4 rounds later at this point. You can do a lot with those picks, starting at 30th overall, which is in the 3rd round, that you can add a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round pick. These guys are all pretty good, and I don't know if the drop-off from Olave to Tyson is what it's going to be based on the spots, 23 spots. I think that's a little bit kind of crazy because Tyson, we've seen rookies immediately produce, and this guy looks like he can immediately produce. There's the fewest questions. I think Cardinal Tate, you have a few questions. Like Kai Lemon, you had a few questions, right? Can they put it all together? But you have a very experienced receiver here in Tyson. He's just been very smooth throughout college. He reminds me a little bit of the profile that we had with Tetero McMillan last year and why he went pretty high. So he's pretty experienced, reliable, and they're going to throw to him right away. And Devon Vele, look, he's a guy that is there. He'll be the 3rd receiver. So I just don't think there's a way that Olave dominates the way he did last year. So I think Tyson is going to get plenty of balls go his way. He's very healthy. Again, Olave, we talked about the concussion history as well. He said he's always one concussion away from hanging up or sitting out a season. So that's a concern also with him because he seems to have that injury lingering, and he's definitely older. The ages are a factor. So I think overall, Jordyn Tyson is a better value. Now, if his value starts to creep up and Olave starts to go down, we might reevaluate this again. But right now, I think Tyson is going to be a massive part of their offense right away.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And yeah, people could be worried about the injuries to Tyson in college, but you just brought up, I mean, we have the same injury worries about Olave, and it's not it's not anything small. It's something that can happen very easily on any given hit. With his concussion history, with how many he had to start his career, he gets another one, he's out for a while. And last year was by far his best season. Before that, he was wide receiver 56 on average in 2024, wide receiver 21 in 2023, wide receiver 25 in 2022. So I would feel more comfortable with him being ranked around that wide receiver 20 mark now that he actually has another guy on the team that's going to demand targets when he's out there. And with Olave's last year, so much of his production just came down to how many targets he saw. He had 156 targets, 100 receptions last year because he was necessary, right? Like, it was him and no one else there at wide receiver. He had 9 games with at least 10 targets last year. That was tied for the third most in the NFL. Only Puka Nacua and Jamar Chase had more with 10 each. He was tied with Amon-Ra St. Brown and JSN for double-digit target games last year. But the difference between him and those guys is him in those games, Olave in those games, averaged 13.9 points per game. Those other guys in those games all averaged at least 19 or more points per game. So, like, even with the great target share, he wasn't putting up these elite numbers like the other guys do with that type of targets. He only had 5 games with more than 12 fantasy points last year. It's just not worthy of a wide receiver 13 pick this season with the additions on the offense, with his history of concussions. I'm not touching him. There's guys going pretty decent, like Emeka Egbuka going 6 wide receiver spots after him. I would rather Egbuka than Olave, just straight up, and other guys are in that consideration as well. With Tyson, where you look at where he's going, his abilities, where the only worries about him being drafted were the injury history, like nothing about his skill set. But the veterans that he's going around in this draft, Cortland Sutton, Brian Thomas, DK Metcalf, Michael Wilson, Parker Washington, Chris Godwin, like, give me the upside of Tyson, right? Like, maybe we could say Brian Thomas has the upside still, but over Sutton or Metcalf or like Chris Godwin or Parker Washington, Jordyn Tyson actually has upside to completely break out. And we see it every year where rookie wide receivers are giving fantasy managers and helping them win championships. It's not this rare thing that happens anymore. And when he has a clear path to targets, I'm just going to be in on Jordyn Tyson for sure this year. Now, what about Juwan Johnson? Because he did have the second most targets on this team last year, 102 targets, 77 receptions, 889 receiving yards, but only 3 receiving touchdowns. So that brought down his fantasy score a lot. He was a tight end 16 and average points per game and half PPR. Is he a late round value in your mind, or just Jordyn Tyson kind of ruined that for him?
Yeah, I think they had to throw to Juwan Johnson. You remember, he's like a wide receiver hybrid. I'm not saying he's in the Marcus Colston range, but you go back in the day, they had Boo Williams. They needed him out of necessity at one point. You go to Jimmy Graham. He's not Jimmy Graham. He's not scoring at a high level. So he's somewhere in that wide range between Boo Williams and Jimmy Graham in their past with tight ends. But you look at what they did at tight end, right? They did invest a little bit with Noah Fant and Oscar Delp, who's a good prospect to develop out of Georgia. So something to look at there. But Noah Fant, of course, has done basically nothing since I don't think he did really anything in his first stop. But he's been not much of a factor. But
he'll be on the field. Like, he's going to get
he's
snapped.
On the field. He's on the field, and he's a guy that can catch passes. Even in Cincinnati, he was around and lingering and doing something last year. And Seattle and Denver, look, Denver never really could get him going. And then Seattle, he just wasn't a team that didn't really utilize him much at all. Then they kind of moved on with the A.J. Barner and some other people. So when you look at Fant and say, look, he's not the best, but again, you're right. He's going to be on the field. And I just don't think, again, Juwan Johnson being that hybrid player, when you bring in a Tyson, he's going to siphon off some of those targets. He has the Shaheed targets. Tyson can also eat up here pretty well. There's the Cooks targets that are lingering, right? They're not that many, but they're still there. They can be eaten up. And I think Tyson is a better guy. He also is a similar type player in terms of intermediate short. I think he's a better red zone threat than Johnson. And he's a guy that can get open. I just said elite separator. So in the middle of the field, when you're looking to move the change, Juwan Johnson's going to be a little bit out of luck in terms of getting that ball here. But it's interesting you mentioned like Cortland Sutton and DK Metcalf around the way that you had Tyson, because look, no one's thinking that, hey, Jalen Waddle and Michael Pittman Jr. push those guys down, but we're definitely not thinking about that with Olave, with Tyson pushing him down. So I think you say, hey, who's going to be more impactful as a second receiver? Or I think you have to say it's going to be Tyson more so than those guys at this point, given those current offenses. And again, Juwan Johnson's value completely killed. Again, he's off the board for me at tight end 17.
Yeah, I am with you on both of those things. Now let's switch over to this backfield. They added Travis Etienne this year, which it would be great and we could be excited, but Alvin Kamara is still there. So we got to figure out how is this going to be split up? Is Kamara still going to be on this team? We'll discuss to close out today's show.
All right, this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by Game Time. We can stream anything, order food in minutes, do everything from our phones, and somehow buying tickets to live events still feels way harder than it should be. Long lines, confusing checkout, prices jumping at the last second. It shouldn't be that complicated. That's why there's Game Time. It gives fans the advantage and makes getting tickets fast and simple. I'm just looking for some concerts I can go to this summer. That's when I have some free time. That's where I'm at, or sporting events, especially baseball games, which I can't see a lot of in my hometown. So when I'm looking out of town, I want to make sure that I'm looking for the best deals. And Game Time is going to help me do that, to find great options in minutes. You can see the full price up front, which is great. There's no surprise fees at checkout. And the zone deals is where you pick the section and save even more. 2 taps and you have great seats locked in. It's quick, easy, and actually makes you want to go to more events, whether they're games or concerts. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, now we're back here to finish up our look at the Saints. We do have to look at that other newcomer. Jordyn Tyson is a big part of what they're going to do in the passing game. But Travis Etienne, a bit of surprise. We thought he might go to the Chiefs or some other team that was looking for a running back help. But then he lands in his home state of New Orleans, comes back home. He's now ranked RB17 on the board. The big question is he going to have to share this backfield? We still don't know, because Alvin Kamara has been rumored to go to the Cowboys and these other teams. I don't know if they have much takers for him. He's an older back who's kind of worn down and had some injury issues. I don't think Kamara is going to be as big of a threat as we think, but I think it's still going to be in the back of our minds that, hey, Kamara is a guy who can catch passes and cut into that work on third downs.
Yeah, my thing is, like, I don't know if they're going to be able to trade him. Like, he's a free agent next year, right? So if they want to get something for him, they have to do it now. But what team's like dying to go trade for a 31-year-old that's been inefficient lately, especially last year? And then the bigger issue is Kamara has been very vocal about wanting to retire and stay with the Saints. He does not want to be traded, right? He does not want to play with another team. So you add that on top, it's like a team's not going to trade for you if they think you could retire, right? Or whatever. So I feel like Kamara's put the Saints in this hard spot where they don't really feel like they want him anymore, but they also don't know how to get rid of him. And the latest reports are that they're trying to figure out where he fits in this team. So it's like, okay, we'll see if he gets cut or traded or what else. But for right now, it looks like it could be both of them on this team for this year until, Kamara is a free agent next year. But if Kamara is on the team, he's going to get snaps and he's going to get touches. He's a veteran on this team, been there forever. There's no way he's just going to be sitting on the bench. Like, it's just not going to happen. And okay, Etienne split time with Jacksonville and still had a good season last year, really good season, running back 10 in total points, running back 13 in points per game. We know 2024 was a disaster for him and the Jags in general, but running back 3 overall in 2023, running back 17 in his 2022, his first season he played in the league. He's now had 1,400 receiving or scrimmage yards in 3 of his 4 seasons played in the NFL. 12 or more touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 years. They gave him a big contract. The Saints did 4 years, 48 million. $12 million a year is a lot of money for a running back. And he's 27 years old. So they need to, utilize him the most they can now before he gets too old into this contract. I can't pay the price of Etienne at running back 17 if Kamara is still on the team.
I think that's very fair. I mean, Kamara is, you're right. I mean, he's not going to be just a token like captain. Okay, we feel bad for him. He's going to sit here and earn a paycheck, right? They're going to put him to work. And also because they don't have a lot of reliable backups. And we tried the Kendre Miller thing, it hasn't quite worked out here in New Orleans. So Kamara kind of has to be there, but in a backup role. But my concern with Kamara being there is the Etienne receptions, right? He came to the league. I thought that was going to be a big part of what he did, but Jacksonville was kind of reluctant to use him in that same role that he did so well at Clemson. And then we saw it kind of expand as they got into better offenses in Jacksonville, especially now with Liam Cohen there. I think you saw the complete package of Etienne start to show up here as just a guy that can do a lot on 3 downs and a very good red zone back as well. We've seen he's very good at finishing runs. And before he used to need to break off the 20-yard run to get in the end zone, but now he's been a little bit more efficient in scoring as well. So, yeah, it's kind of expensive here. If Kamara's gone, then I think he can really live up to the expectations and shoot back into borderline RB1, RB2 territory. So even move up 5 spots if Kamara is gone. But right now you have to hedge your bets a little bit with Etienne, with his usage. And again, I hope it's not going to be a straight up timeshare. Kamara should be faded a little bit more, but as long as he's on the team, Michelle, like you said, you have to factor it in that there's someone there that's going to take some of those key touches, especially in the passing game, away from Etienne. And don't forget, Kamara can also score in bunches. He just have the tied record with 6 touchdowns in a game, so he can find the end zone at certain times as well. So he's not a total zero. He's fought through injury, and they're just not going to fade him away if he's going to beat it.
Yeah, and it's not like Shough is a big guy at checking down either. So if they're going to split the receiving workload, right? And Kellen Moore, I mean, just last year didn't use the Kamara was down to just 3.5 targets a game last year, career low. So already in Kellen Moore's system, he hasn't pushed it last year for Shough to do that. He didn't push Jalen Hurts to target Saquon Barkley in 2024, right? So maybe that's just not a big part of Kellen Moore's offense that he cares about making his quarterback do. And now that they have Jordyn Tyson as well, it probably will be more focused on the wide receivers and the tight ends. But I just don't know how many targets there's going to be to go around in this backfield. And then who will be the goal line guy? Because it's not like either of these guys have been like super efficient around the goal line in their career, or as of late anyways. So we don't know who will be the goal line guy. We don't know who will be the receiving guy. Yes, we expect Etienne to get more workload than Kamara in general because he got paid. But we are just 1 year removed from Alvin Kamara being the running back 6 in fantasy in points per game. That was in 2024, running back 5 in 2023. Like, a lot of good production there before it going downhill last year. If Kamara's gone, then I'll jump back onto the Etienne train. But with the uncertainties of all of everything to do with the Saints and how good they'll be, when Javonte Williams is going right behind him, or Cam Scattaboo, or Kyron Williams right in front of him, like, I prefer all of those guys pretty easily over Etienne. I was a big Etienne fan last offseason. I loved his value. I loved his price. But now this year, it's just gone back too high.
Yeah, we're going to watch this, see if it fluctuates a little bit as we get closer up or down. But right now, I think the best you can do is get the cost in return at RB17. I think that's the best you're going to do. You're not going to get much upside. There is a little bit of downside that you can also factor into at that spot. So, yeah, buyer beware here. If Kamara moves, I'll be interested to see how the consensus moves up Etienne, and then he'll be a lot more appealing, I think, to us as well. So, again, I think Etienne, we need to know about his targets, and we need to feel better about his scoring ability to really invest in him that high. And look, it might change as we get closer and we get some reads on the roles that these guys have. We'll do that. Or if a late suitor, somebody gets hurt and Kamara has to be moved to that team, we'll see. Maybe it's Denver, right? They have backs who always get hurt. They have Sean Payton there, so who knows, right? That might be the only scenario where he'll want to move, and it could still happen here. So I want to see what happens, but I think that would be the best case scenario. They got to move Kamara to help Etienne.
Yeah, Absolutely. All right. That's it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Fantasy Football. On our next show, we'll be breaking down the 2026 Carolina Panthers. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Fantasy Football so you get all the latest episodes. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Fantasy Football ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more, all for just $5 a month. Head to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes to join the club. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.